Welcome to the Simple Doesn't Mean Easy podcast. We are here every Monday and Friday working at simplifying things in our lives, one day at a time, one simple step at a time. I'm your host, Michelle Visser, and today I'm talking with Brigitte Mars. She is an herbalist and a nutritional consultant for natural health with over 50 years of experience. She teaches herbal medicine. She's a founding member of the American Herbalist Guild, and Brigitte is an author of 18 books. That's a lot of books, including, I'll name just a few, the Natural First Aid Handbook, Natural Remedies for Mental and Emotional Health, the Country Almanac of Home Remedies, and lots more. As Brigitte and I talk today, though, about the fact that we can forage weeds, what we call weeds, in our yards for food. But, that's the way that actually our ancestors did it just a few generations ago. But instead, we prefer to have our food shipped from across the country. I couldn't help but see the correlation to exactly what's going on with the beef in our country these days. The fact that it can be shipped on cargo ships, packaged in the US in some way, cut a little and then packaged or whatever, something minor done in the US, and it can be labeled that it's a product of the US. And instead, there are ranches out there that want to service our family's needs. Well, I am so pleased to introduce you to one of the ranches that I think might be your best option. I love what this family is doing. They raise the meat the way it's supposed to be raised, regeneratively and rotating their pastures. And they have beef share options, which I think is so cool. But you also can just grab a sample box. In fact, they put together a special deal just for my followers, just for my listeners of the podcast. So please go check out soulyrested.com/beef and tell the real family that I said hi and sample some of this amazing meat that is literally grown and raised the way it's supposed to be. soulyrested.com/beef. Now, let's talk dandelions. All right, Brigitte, I'm so glad to have you with us because, well, my podcast listeners have heard a lot about dandelions lately. My grandmother was the hugest fan. She's probably the reason that I first decided I really love dandelions because my grandmother was a huge fan of them. Like a bouquet of dandelions was her favorite thing in the world. And then my father would always argue with her that they were weeds. So we've talked about that on the podcast recently. And I'm glad that you actually can bring in the knowledge that they're both. And that's okay. Weeds are great, right?
Weeds
So
are
thank you
amazing.
for taking. Yes, absolutely.
And it's really easy to call something a weed because you don't know what it is. And Emerson said, a weed is an herb whose virtue has not yet been recognized. And we need to remember that our ancestors, the pioneers, brought the dandelions over deliberately, and then they planted them. It's a native to Eurasia. And then they put fences around them to keep the deer and the rabbit from eating them. And,
I didn't know that.
they did.
Brigitte, I did not know that.
And,
I love
dandelion
it.
I consider it one of the top 5 most nutritious vegetables on the face of the earth. And, there's this myth
Mm,
out there that dandelions kill the grass. Every
mhm.
time I'm in a, public speaking engagement, I say, how many of you have heard the dandelions kill the grass? And, there's always a few people say, yeah, I heard that. And the truth is that grass, which is usually non-native, requires about 30% of our nation's water. Okay, so people are using all this water, which is a precious resource, to water the grass, and still it's often not enough when it gets really hot and drought stricken, which is
Yeah.
happening all around the country. I know here in Colorado, we have not had the rain that we usually get in the springtime. So what happens is the grass dies, but the dandelions are still standing. They survive adversity. And I think that's a really important factor, that they do not need all the water. They're survivors. They adapt. And right now, when we look at this polluted planet, like, chemtrails and climate change and excessive heat and drought and the escalating cost of food prices. I feel like we've been bamboozled big time to think that the dandelions are the enemy, because the dandelions actually aerate the soil and make for healthier lawns. And farmers around the world know that where the dandelions grow, that's a good place to put the garden. So the dandelions,
Mm.
nobody waters them, weeds them, mulches them, fertilizes them. They survive adversity. And I really think we need to be adaptable like the dandelions.
Yeah. And I love that. You pointed that out. You point out so much in your book, Dandelion Medicine, but you mentioned in there the fact that they are so versatile and so strong. They have built up resistance to so many problems like drought, and we should be growing them, cultivating them instead of pulling them out as weeds. So, what happened that they became this threat? Why did that become a scenario?
Well, in the late 1800s, there became this trend amongst the British aristocracy that if you had a very manicured lawn that was suitable only for lawn tennis, which is, I think, croquet,
Mm,
or badminton,
okay.
or croquet,
Right.
that it was a sign of aristocracy. Like, "Hey, we're so
Huh.
rich." People would drive by in their carriages and say, "Hey, they're so rich." Like they don't
Mm.
need salad fixings. They don't need to grow their own food. They don't need to treat their own household ailments, like headaches, stomach aches, that they send for the doctor to bring them new and modern drugs, and they send for the greengrocer to deliver vegetables. So it
Mm.
became this trend to show off one's wealth. But here we
Wow.
are where we're eating a lot of annual foods that perish with the first frost. Our zucchini and our tomatoes are toast unless you
Yeah.
cover them with the frost.
Which is a big problem here in New England because we have such a short growing season. I know what you're saying.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, it just was a way of showing off. But, during
Wow.
some of the world wars, it became fashionable to have, a victory garden. So people would plant things
Yes.
to have food. And, we also need to look at how important it is to eat locally. And so, why would anyone want to, buy lettuce trucked in from California or Ecuador or something, when we really could be using the dandelions. Dandelions are in the same family as lettuce, the Asteraceae or the daisy family. And, they're just so
Yeah.
useful, but we've really been
Yeah, I know.
bamboozled.
And you mentioned, you know what I never thought of, Brigitte? A lot of things you mentioned I never thought of in your book, but one thing was to use the leaves in place of lettuce on a sandwich. And I don't know why can you believe I've just never even thought of that? Like my eyes were open, like, oh, I could try that. Because I
Well,
put them on salads, but never thought of
absolutely.
using the dandelion green literally in place of lettuce on a sandwich.
Well, ideally, we should all be eating more green leafy vegetables. And, dandelion is
Yeah.
one of several weeds that goes great on a salad or a sandwich. Or last night we made dandelion lasagna using the dandelion leaves.
Hmm.
But they do have the perception of being bitter. They are more bitter after they flower. So early spring is best
Mhm.
time for the leaves. But then the flowers are also edible. I've made dandelion
Yeah.
flower muffins. There's so many recipes in here. I made a dandelion flower
Yeah.
cake, dandelion cookies, um, and so a little bit
Yeah,
of bitter.
and I'm a huge fan of tea, and I have to let everybody know, if all they want are amazing tea recipes that use dandelions, they should get a copy of your book, Dandelion Medicine, because you have pages and pages and pages of wonderful tea recipes. That made me very happy.
And, we could look at a dandelion as nutritive, meaning it's so high in vitamins and minerals. So, one of the many, many uses of dandelion tea is that it's diuretic. And because of that, it can help lower high blood pressure. So, if we have high blood pressure, we don't want, like, just take a drug. It's like maybe we need to meditate. Maybe we need to calm down. Maybe we need to play slower music. But most chemical diuretics, will deplete you of potassium. And one way to lower blood pressure is to get rid of some of the excess fluid in our bodies. And so people who take chemical diuretics can become very deficient in potassium. But dandelion leaves give us potassium. It's so amazing how
Yeah.
beautiful they are. We could also say dandelion leaves might be good for edema. Sometimes women and sometimes men get fluid retention where their rings don't come off or their ankles get swollen.
Yeah.
Um,
Every
so,
summer. Every
yeah,
summer.
every summer. So dandelion leaves are going to be good for that. But it's really a way for this wonderful plant to transform some of the minerals in the earth so that our bodies can utilize them. So the dandelion leaves make a great tea, and then the root as well makes a great tea that's really
Yes.
detoxifying for the skin, the liver, the blood. So I think of dandelion
Yes.
root tea as a remedy for acne, eczema, psoriasis. Anytime we want to feel more clarified in our body, but also our mind, dandelion root is a traditional remedy to clear old stored emotions out of our livers.
Mm,
We store emotions in our body. There's a saying in the natural health world, the issues in the tissue. So let's say you're processing
mm.
some difficult trauma, help your therapist, or whether you're your own therapist or your therapist, to cleanse some of those old emotions out of you. And if we look at the dandelion root, its energy is going like out. It's going to help not only detoxify your liver, but your colon, your kidneys. So it's just so amazing. But
Mm.
as we know, we
I
go ahead.
Oh, I
Sounded
was
like
just gonna tell you that I love dandelion root in my tea. I have a blend. I use chicory and cinnamon chips as well, and the taste is amazing. It tastes like coffee, but better. And the medicinal properties of the dandelion root, I love. But can you back up for a second and help us understand decoctions versus just steeping tea for a few minutes and how we do that with dandelion root?
Of course, Michelle. So when we make a tea out of leaves, they have a lighter, more pliable nature. So if you're making a tea from the leaf in general, you boil the water, add the leaves, and you can use a generous amount, put the lid on, and let it steep. I do think with herbal teas, we can let them steep quite a bit longer than black tea. Like instead of 3 to 5 minutes, 20 minutes
I
is great.
agree.
Sometimes I even do them overnight. And I sometimes even
Yes, me too.
in a ball jar. I put the herbs in the ball jar, add boiling water, put the lid on, and let it sit overnight. So that's totally possible.
Yes.
But roots
Yes. A
and
lot of
bark,
herbs don't get bitter. Some do, I know, but a lot of them you can steep for days and they're not going to get bitter, unlike black tea. That's why you have that 2 to 3 minutes with black tea because it's going to be bitter otherwise. Okay, so I'm sorry. Get back to your decock
so if we're going to
recommendation.
make a tea out of a root or a bark or something that's harder and woodier, it's going to take a
Hmm.
little more heat and time. So I usually simmer at a low boil for about 20 minutes
Okay.
with the lid on and then strain it. So, and then sometimes, let's say you're making dandelion root tea, you would simmer that at a low boil for 20 minutes. And then if you want to add some of the leaves, turn it off, add the leaves, and put the lid back on and let it steep again for a little bit longer. So, what we're doing is we're imbibing the minerals of the earth. And
Hmm.
you mentioned dandelion root coffee. That's usually made by roasting the root to kind of caramelize it and sweeten it.
Mm.
It does have a really nice coffee like substitute. And I love that you're adding, cinnamon to it because it can be like sort of a chai, which is really
Hmm.
delicious and
But
warming.
I didn't know, I've never tried it. It's good just by itself. The dandelion root, it tastes like coffee.
Yes, but then, I'm not a big coffee drinker, but if I were to drink
Me
coffee,
too.
I probably would not add honey or some kind of milk or milk substitute, so you can make
Hmm.
it yummy. We like to use
Okay.
hazelnut
See, I
milk.
thought it was my chicory that I really liked. I honestly never tried just the dandelion root by itself, so I need to try that.
And dandelion root and chicory are both in the same family. So chicory's it looks kind of like dandelion, but it has beautiful bluish purple flowers. But they are very
Yes.
close relatives.
Yes, I actually grow chicory in our garden because we're pig farmers, and they love the leaves and the blooms of the chicory, and then I use the root to make my coffee. So, and I
And
love it that you break down all these. Only people on YouTube are going to be able to see this. Those of you who are just listening, sorry, but there's this long list in Brigitte's book of the benefits of the root from the dandelion. And it just goes on and on and on. And that's just the root. I mean, your book breaks down so much more. Like, in the few minutes we have left, can you help us understand a little bit more about how the dandelion truly can be medicine for us? We're going to pause this episode because I have something important to ask you. Do you ever use botanicals or adaptogens in your drinks? Did you know that you don't need to just have a glass of tea or a glass of water or a smoothie or protein shake even? You can up level your drink to improve your overall health in really cool ways just by a very simple, small addition. Now, there are so many options, it can get overwhelming. But for one thing, if you want to go check out the drinks that I have in my summer drink series, go to soulyrested.com/summer drink, because I have found sneaky little ways to deliciously add botanicals and adaptogens to a lot of the drinks that I'm introducing to you over there for this whole series on summer drinks. And I think you're really going to love it. But definitely check out the code that I have for you and the link to the botanicals website. But you don't have to overthink it. You don't have to learn what these botanicals do for you and how they're going to help your health in different ways and then figure out how to add it to a drink. Just go try some of these recipes. You're going to love them. There's options there that are going to help you with weight loss, with adding antioxidants to your day, even some options that'll give you some energy with zero, um, what's the word I want to use? Zero downside, no crash. It's a simple word, zero crash, but lots of great energy. And there's also things that are going to boost your metabolism in really great ways. So I think you're going to love it. Just go check it out. Really, trust me. Soulyrested.com/summer drink. Soulyrested.com/summer drink. And check out those discount codes while you're there. If you try some of these recipes, reach out. Let me know which one's your favorite. I don't know if I can choose. They're all delicious. Soulyrested.com/summer drink.
absolutely. And when you think about all the medicinal uses of dandelion, good for the skin, good for the liver, helping with depression, high in minerals, nutritive. And then you
Mhm.
say, well, why don't we just use that? Well, you can't patent a plant. And so pharmaceutical
There's
companies,
no money to be made.
no money to be made. As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, you could buy some poisons to spray it and then give yourself kind of disease, and then you'll need
Yeah.
some kind of drug when the dandelion is not only the solution
Yep.
and the remedy. It's
Yeah.
really all about money.
So,
We have a
yes.
pharmacy in our backyards if we only
Yes.
knew. And then, this is another crazy thing, Michelle. It's said that the average American recognizes over 1,000 logos and the products they're
Mm.
associated with. Even before kids can read, sometimes it's like, oh, Louis Vuitton or Jack in the Box or
Yeah.
something. But we recognize less than 5 plants or 5 birds in our area, and one that people often recognize is the dandelion,
Mhm.
and they think that that means they're a bad citizen if they have them in their yard, but yet it's little blooms of sunshine. Of course, kids love to make dandelion crowns. They love to blow
Yes.
the poofy seed heads of the dandelion.
You don't have to be a kid. Don't you love both of those things too?
Absolutely, I do. And the fact that it's
Yeah.
aerating the soil, the fact that it's
Yes.
providing pollination for our bees and our birds, like,
Yep.
so it's time to get real, and we need to make it okay to have dandelions in your yard and not okay to have warning
Yes.
pesticides applied signs in your yard. And so,
Yes.
Michelle, I'm so
And for what
grateful.
it's worth, you can still play croquet or lawn tennis or whatever you want to play and have dandelions. You can still do it, just to tell those British people from the 1800s. and and I love it, by the way, that everything you've broken down for us is basically telling us this sweet little flower that we all recognize, that we all have loved since we were kids, can literally replace big food, big pharma, and big ag in our life. Like we just need more dandelions.
It's so true. And, really, it's so simple. The weeds are telling us, I'm here, I'm abundant, I grow easily. You could save thousands of dollars a year. You could save your health. You could help
Yep,
the bees. You could use less water. It's so simple. And that's why I'm going to be talking about this for the rest of my life. And, this book
I love
has
it.
recipes, remedies. Uh, Soon I have a book coming out called Nettle Power. That's another great herb. If I were going to
Yeah.
another planet, and they said you can only bring, 3 plants with you, dandelions would certainly be one of them.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Brigitte. Everybody, go get a copy of Dandelion Medicine. I seriously love this little book. It is a little book packed full with all kinds of great information. Let everybody know, where can they find you?
I'm at BrigitteMars.com. You've got my name spelled correctly over there. And I have
Yep,
18 different books that I've written. I have a YouTube. I'm a big presence on TikTok. And I am here to
love
help
it.
the creator help the people remember the plants that are a gift to heal and serve our needs and to help heal the planet.
Amen. I love it. Thanks so much for taking the time today to talk with us.
Big love. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, friends. I am going to leave some things in the show notes for you. My tea recipe for the herbal blend that I make that has dandelion root in it. It's an amazing tea blend. In fact, it's my absolute favorite, and it's a tea that tastes like coffee. I'll leave the recipe for that in the show notes. I will also leave directions on how to forage and dehydrate dandelions, because they're fantastic to dehydrate and use in teas that way as well. In addition to so many other things you can do, you could certainly use dehydrated dandelion flowers or leaves on your salads or in your food in lots of different ways. So check out the show notes for that. Or you can go to soullyrested.com and, of course, search for these things as well. Um, and what else do I want to tell you? Oh, make sure to check out soullyroasted.com/beef to see that amazing special offer of a sample box of beef for you guys. soullyrested.com/beef. And I think that's it. I'm going to go out and do some gardening now. And if I see a dandelion, I'm going to leave it. You can bet that. Well, guys, remember, it is easy to forget how blessed we are to live this life. So enjoy the simple, everyday efforts. It's not easy, but it is definitely a good life.